Hey guys, it's Paul, combat veteran, MMA fighter, YouTuber, and today we are checking out another awesome video from the Templin Institute. This is on Lord Commander Dante, a character whose profile has risen immensely after the Great Rift and the fall of Cadia. So I'm excited to learn more about this pretty wild character. But before we get started, of course, check out the merch store. I have all sorts of fun Warhammer parody shirts. And check out the Instagram. Check out the second channel where I do more video game reactions. Also, I have a Twitch account now. And, of course, I have a MMA podcast that I run with my brother. I've got the link to all that stuff down below. It would be great if you guys can check it out and come join us. All right. Having done that, let's get into it. You know, the Templin Institute, they have the best intros, honestly, and they keep getting better.
Of the countless trillions of souls that make up the Imperium of Man, most will never see a space marine of the Adeptus Astartes in their lifetime. And they might count themselves lucky to be spared the type of carnage that would compel those superhuman warriors to battle. Yet, the presence of the Astartes can still be felt in a multitude of ways, and foremost in the legends that surround them. To the Imperium, they are angels of death, far removed from the trivial concerns of mortal men. They are nothing less than demigods, reflections of the Emperor himself.
So what is interesting is that it's not really explored, I feel like, as much as it could be in a lot of these lore, at least the lore videos I've seen, where they talk about the propaganda value of a space marine. And again, the idea that humanity is defended by these superhuman avatars of the Emperor would certainly have tremendous propaganda value, both in the idea that the Imperium is not only run by and defended by quasi-gods, but that the Space Marines, as being noble above reproach, defenders of truth and justice, and all around models of the Imperium's right to govern. Because a big part of course, governing, as we know, is governing by consent. Ultimately, if enough Imperial worlds decided they were tired of contributing tithes and troops, then the Imperium would just fall apart. But they don't, and that's because, in large part, the populations or their rulers have faith that the Imperium has the right to govern them. And it does so not through democracy, but through a demonstration of efficacy, right? It demonstrates or markets themselves as being a highly effective governance. And something like the Space Marines, right? Perfect, morally righteous warriors are an awesome emblem of that. This is why, of course, you see a lot of military dictatorships emphasize their strength and efficiency in propaganda. And it's not because, anyone who served in the U.S. military knows that it is many things, but efficient it is not. And it's often not even particularly effective. It's always the joke that to civilians, military grade means high quality, and to military service members, military grade means an accident waiting to happen. But, of course, the sort of in authoritarian countries run by military dictatorships, because they can't lean on the elections as a proof of the legitimacy of the government, they use their elite troops, they use their high-tech military hardware, and they use displays and shows of force in lieu of demonstrating that. If you look at, for example, North Korean state TV routinely demonstrates their country's advanced military hardware, even though almost every North Korean likely can infer that the cost of developing, say, a nuclear weapon when there is starvation and disease all around them is obviously depriving the North Korean people of valuable resources. But the North Korean government remains in power in large part because their citizens feel that, yes, we are represented by this elite military force which is effective. Their weapons have effectively stopped the imperialists from invading. Again, very common propaganda technique, and certainly one the Imperium would be just idiotic to not exploit in the Space Marines. I'm honestly shocked that Space Marines are not used as complete propaganda, a la war heroes in World War II. Both the Soviets and the U.S. would take their war heroes, their Audie Murphys, their Vasily, what's the sniper's name? Vasily something. Anyway, take their war heroes after they've done something great. Their press plays it up really hard, and then they go around touring the country, rallying civilians, giving them faith in their fighting forces. I'm surprised that doesn't happen to Space Marines more, that they don't have Space Marines being dropped into friendly planets that contribute a large number of guardsmen or whose guards regiments have been slaughtered wholesale or eaten by a Tyranid or disintegrated by a Necron. They don't send them some Space Marines to wave their arms and pose for photos and that sort of thing.
Yet for all the myths and worship that surrounds them, the Astartes at their core remain human. While many among their number have come to deny this, they are no less vulnerable to the dangers of the universe. A lucky shot may pierce their powered armor. A festering wound might overcome their enhanced biology. Their strength can be bested, and their souls can be corrupted. At times throughout the centuries, however, opportunities present themselves in which the finest warriors of the Adeptus Astartes might not only rise to their mythic reputation, but exceed it. Marneus Calgar, Logan Grimnar, Vulcan Hestan, no mere tale or sermon can fully account for the feats of these champions. Still, even atop the highest pantheon of imperial saints and heroes, there is a single soul who stands apart. For not since the time of heroes and the cataclysm of the Horus heresy has a single man given so much of himself to the Imperium, and had the hopes and fate of so many rest on his actions alone. He is the chapter master of the Blood Angels, Lord of the Host, Regent and Warden of the Imperium Nihilus, Hero of the Red Scar, Uniter of the Sanguinary Brotherhood, the living embodiment of the 5 angelic graces, and 10,000 other titles and honorifics. He is Lord Commander Dante.
You know you're a badass when you have one name.
Over a millennium.
Or an acronym, right? Once you just have letters, then you know you're a badass.
Ago, a boy was born on the second moon of Baal, within its great salt wastes. Like many, he suffered a cruel childhood, abandoning his father after the death of his mother. He resolved to become an angel or die in the attempt. None among the tribes that dwelt in the salt wastes had ever survived the trek to the distant fortress monastery of the Blood Angels, and there was little sign this boy's journey would end any differently. Stunted by malnutrition and weakened even by the standards of Baal, it was inevitable that, like so many others, he collapsed from thirst far from his destination. The entity that revealed itself to him that day is shrouded in the ancient lore of the Blood Angels, thought perhaps to be an aspect of the fallen Sanguinius himself. But whatever it was, it gifted the precious water necessary for the boy to complete his journey.
Yeah, this sort of origin story is really common among really any celebrity that needs to have a justification of their status, right? And this is common once you see it and you listen to celebrity interviews or biographies that are authorized by that celebrity, you see that they really work hard to cultivate this myth that something unique within their childhood, something special about them, sets them apart from regular people. And it's sort of fascinating to see, right? Sometimes in modern parlance, if it's an actor, for example, they'll say, oh, little Johnny, he would put on stage plays all the time for his parents, and you just couldn't get him away from it, right? It's that there was some calling deep in their heart that you and I don't have. Or they'll tell a musician, they'll say, oh, he could hear a commercial jingle once and play it perfectly on the piano. And these sort of mythos building stories, right, are sort of essential to building up fans, right? If you want devotees, you have to have these sort of drama-filled stories where you walk this line between the fact that the celebrity is totally relatable on one hand, but also deserving of your devotion. Pick your celebrity. Again, look at your favorite football player, your favorite entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are terrible about it. Really high level entrepreneurs, they love these sort of stories where they mythologize themselves. And the other thing they do that I think is actually pretty terrible is they wash away their failures, right? And no one wants to revisit their failures again and again, right? But of course, when you have this entrepreneur that goes, I grew up in a hard Scrabble home, they'll frame it as like my dad was a welder, but really he owned like a welding business. Elon Musk is pretty good about this sort of thing. They'll emphasize how regular they grew up. Maybe they'll even lean hard on a hardship they faced. Again, nothing exceptional. But then they'll just list off their successes. They'll say, oh, they went to college. Then they founded this business, and they sold it for $1 million. And then they founded another one, and another one, and another one. And everything was great, and they were always great. And they had 5 kids, and now he's a big shot multimillionaire. And they ignore the fact that, again, Elon Musk as an example, there's a guy who, he had 2 terrible divorces, right? Vicious divorces, and undoubtedly they must have affected him deeply. You have the failure of a lot of his companies, right? The Boring Company. Did that ever turn a profit? No. It built a hole in the ground that uses cars like a skateboard at tremendous cost for no meaningful profit. Again, you look at a lot of these things and you're just left with this idea that the failures get washed away and the accolades are all that remain. And again, once you see it in the marketing of celebrities and anyone, you realize just how much of an industry it is. And this sounds like that's what the Imperium is doing with Dante. There's some drama-filled story where this seems like to follow the paradigm of he's the scrawniest runt of the litter, but through his tenacity and toughness, he proves his worth and overcomes obstacles and becomes this great Lord Commander who's never failed and never faltered.
In the trials that followed, the boy displayed no particular promise, save his indomitable and moral fortitude. His refusal to kill a fellow aspirant was in truth his final test, and he was sealed inside a sarcophagus to undergo the implantation of his chapter's gene seed. Many die within this process, such is the way of the Blood Angels, but where most endure or suffer quietly, the boy screamed endlessly, drifting between consciousness and slumber, yet never falling fully into either. A scarred and malformed boy named Louis entered that chamber, but it was the angelic form of Dante that left it. No aspirant had ever endured such pain within the transformation process, and it seemed to the sanguinary priesthood to be an omen, but for what, they could not be certain.
See what I mean?
Dante rose through the ranks, but had it not been for an era of suffering and loss inflicted on the Blood Angels, he might never have ascended to the rank of Lord Commander. Yet.
See, you just wash away. He rose through the ranks, right? But who knows, man? Maybe he was passed up for promotion several times, right? Maybe he was embarrassed himself in combat early in his career. These are the stories that celebrities just wash away. But I think they're really important because you need to include those stories to tell people that greatness is something that you have to choose. Right? Every person I've ever known who's ever done anything great and heroic has been as deeply flawed as any other person and has made just as many mistakes as any other person, right? It's just in these moments these crucial moments that they're able to think clearly, make really good decisions, and demonstrate the sort of prowess that you expect from, take your pick, a sports hero, an actual war hero.
A number of devastating campaigns had left their brotherhood shattered, and of the 200 Astartes that survived this era, Dante was the last living captain, and the only choice for chapter master. Some might have expected his inauspicious start to herald a bleak reign as chapter master and usher the final disillusion on the Blood Angels, but Dante's fate was far different. He oversaw the restoration of the chapter and led them across their most glorious and triumphant millennia since the great counter-offensive that followed the Horus Heresy. In every manner of battle, across every kind of campaign, Dante emerged from simply one champion of the Imperium among many to perhaps the single most accomplished Astartes in living memory. No one, it is said, has ever set foot on so many of the Imperium's worlds as he. Part of this is due to his astounding age, having served the Imperium for well over 1,500 standard years, with 1,100 of those as chapter master. He has led his chapter through ages of civil war, rampant Xenos expansionism, and the dark incursions of the ruinous powers. His vestige stands on uncounted worlds, his name spoken with unabashed awe.
I feel like I haven't learned anything about Dante yet. All I've learned is that he went through the selection process of an Astartes with the Blood Angels, survived long enough to become chapter master, and was chapter master for a long time.
Yet the greatest of his campaigns was fought to save his own homeworlds of Baal. The advance of Hive Fleet Leviathan, the greatest such force of Tyranids yet seen, threatened to strip every molecule of biomatter and eradicate the Blood Angels from all existence. While Dante's fanatical defense of his chapter's fortress monastery equaled Sanguinius's own ancient defense of the Imperial Palace, the Lord Commander's most skillful triumph occurred before the battle had even started. A lesser man might not have been able to mobilize such allies to his side, but to Dante came almost all the successor chapters of the old Blood Angels Legion, assembling again a force unseen in 10,000 years. The arrival of the reborn Primarch Rabute Guilliman sealed the fate of Hive Fleet Leviathan, who in victory bestowed an even greater responsibility to the Lord Commander. With the galaxy split asunder by a great rift, piercing through reality itself, the Imperium has been severed. 500,000 worlds and Baal itself have been cut off from the light of the Astronomicon, and the victory of the ruinous powers appears imminent. In this desperate era, Dante has been named regent of the Imperium Nihilus and charged with the defense of this shadowy realm.
So wait, within the Imperium Nihilus, is there warp travel? Or is it just much more precarious? I'm not clear on this at all.
There is little doubt across the Imperium that Dante is the perfect choice for such an appointment. He is an exemplar of the fearlessness, determination, and the genius at the heart of every Astartes. But above...
I mean, one of the things that's sort of interesting that is worth talking about is the power of myth, right? And what makes sort of this Dante character really unique is his age, right? The fact that he is a living, breathing example of the Imperium's, comparatively recent past. And this is one of the things that militaries and military units love to emphasize is their past heroes and their past units' deeds, right? And mythologizing them is seen as really important to a unit. And it's for good reason, right? It's because you as a currently serving soldier have to live up to that mythos. And, when I was stationed on Fort Riley, right, they had gigantic posters of the Big Red One charging the beaches of Normandy. And it was, pretty daunting to be in, the PX and see all these images of, again, the 1st Infantry Division in Normandy and in Vietnam and in, Iraq and Afghanistan, because, again, in 2010, we'd been there for 10 years at that point. And to recognize, even in the First World War, And you have to recognize that that is deliberate, and it's to remind soldiers that they are part of a mythologized legacy, and that through their deeds, they too can enter this collectively enter this pantheon of mythic heroes. And so it's pretty fascinating, right? It'll be fascinating to know, like my company was attached to the 101st Airborne's Task Force Bastogne, their 1st Brigade. So that is the unit that traces its lineage to Easy Company and the 101st Airborne, and that imagery was really strong when I was deployed, and they really emphasized it. But what's unique, again, is that my unit was given a meritorious unit citation as part of the 101st, and so that's part of their legacy, right? And it's pretty fascinating to be like, okay, at 50 years from now, those sort of, that stuff will be passed into myth and will be part of the mythology of the 101st Airborne in the future. But of course, the thing that sort of makes it all work is that you get to do that polishing of the myth that we talked about that celebrities do, right? You have to do it with mythological units, just like you have to do them with mythological, quasi-mythological figures. You got to kind of polish away the flaws, polish away the mistakes, the mismanagement, the poor tactical choices, the bad leadership, the allegations of wrongdoing, and you just kind of got to wipe that away and replace it with some sort of, again, rosier picture. Because who wants to be part of a tarnished and middling legacy? Nobody, right? So having someone like Dante, again, the myth of Dante has to be so powerful, especially for the Imperium Nihilus. Almost no living being can possibly live up to the mythos. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the belief that a legend, a living legend, the embodiment of one of the great Primarchs, is protecting the Imperium Nihilus, which must be a terrifying time for them to be cut off like that from the Astronomicon.
Of even that, reflected in him is the character of Sanguinius himself: mercy, empathy, and grace. Even among the angelic blood angels, he manifests the spirit of their fallen Primarch like no other. But so long has he lived, and so great his accomplishments, that now even Dante has been lost in his own legend. Did he truly banish a keeper of secrets within the pleasure gardens of fabled Luxurasa? Did he really face down an entire Black Legion alone? Were the pilgrims aboard the Toils of the Faithful rescued by his hand? How many did he truly save during the siege of Maculos? How many heretics has he laid low? Only Dante and the Emperor can say for certain, and the Lord Commander is no more likely to speak of such things than the master of mankind. In battle, Dante hides his face behind the death mask of Sanguinius, a shrieking visage of agony to strike terror into the enemies of mankind.
Interesting.
This masked figure does not bleed, does not suffer, and is strong enough to shoulder any burden.
This is very interesting. That Dante is a mythological figure who's done a great many things, who is always hidden behind the mask. Makes me wonder if there isn't a couple of other avatars of Dante that float around, and should one fall in battle, another avatar of Dante will emerge. I mean, I'm sure there is a real Chapter Master Dante, but again, logic would dictate, which has no place in the 40K universe, logic would dictate that Chapter Master Dante, the only qualified regent of the Imperium Nihilus, should not be swinging a sword at carnifexes. He should be governing the stinking half the galaxy. Now, I know that doesn't happen much in Warhammer 40K, but man, that dude could definitely stand to put his armor on loan, right? Show up to some battles, rally the troops, slaughter some heretics, and dip, and nobody has to be any the wiser that wasn't the Chapter Master Dante, right? The myth is more powerful than the man.
In the time of ending, the Imperium needs symbols, not men of flesh and blood. And yet, in the rare instances in which this mask is removed, The figure beneath is not the man who first emerged from that sarcophagus a millennia ago. His golden hair has turned long and white. His skin is lined by tracks of weariness and age. He is old now, and his weary eyes reflect lifetime after lifetime of carnage and sacrifice. Only one thing prevents him from succumbing to time. In life, the Primarch Sanguinius is said to have seen visions of the future. 99 scrolls are interred deep within the vaults of Marest, in the Librarium on Baal, and in them, Dante has glimpsed his destiny. Sanguinius foresaw a battle to overshadow all others, and that when all hope had faded, a golden warrior would stand between the Emperor of mankind and his destruction. Most interpret this to refer to Sanguinius' own stand against Horus, but Dante believes that golden figure to be himself, and a day is drawing closer when the defense of the Emperor will rest on him alone. This belief is perhaps shared, for the great enemy has its own prophecies. They warn the followers of the dark gods of the final flight of the dead angel's host, of the last archangel. They fear a death that soars. They shriek in terror of a golden mask that forever stares and never smiles, weeping tears of frozen gold.
Yeah, very dramatic. Interesting. That's what you gotta love about predictions, man. It's like those Nostradamus scrolls. People are like, Nostradamus predicted 9/11. Nostradamus wrote like I'm going to say it was like 10,000 different quatrains. Yeah, you write 10,000 things of random shit, and you're going to be able to pick out a couple that sound really prophetic. I actually was watching a interesting YouTube documentary, maybe I'll throw a link below, on Coco the gorilla. This is the gorilla that many people believed had mastered sign language communication. But in fact, this was never scientifically established, right? The gorilla was able to mimic signs and had been trained to produce those signs in response to certain stimuli, but the interpretation was always done by one person, and often it couldn't be replicated with other people. Other sign language professionals would not be able to understand what this gorilla was saying. And so a similar effect, of course, seems to perhaps be happening with all of these prophecies, the wolf time, Sanguinius, whatever chaos prophecy you have, right? If you write enough shit, 99 scrolls worth of it, you're going to land on some stuff that you feel reflects your current time and space. But that's how human beings are, right? Human beings just have this natural urge to interpret meaning where there may not be any. All right, let's see.
In Dossier, the Templin Institute investigates the legendary figures from alternate worlds.
No. Sometimes they throw in the extra... Nope, this is just promo stuff. Yeah, sometimes Templin Institute has some little Easter eggs at the end of their videos, which is actually pretty fun. They had the one where Trazen just sort of dialed in and talked to them about the Necron dynasties, which, again, pretty fun. But I like the Templin Institute, man. They have a good flair for the dramatic. They really know how to get you hype. And their videos are, digestible. They're not 4-hour-long lore videos. But, again, when you're talking about Lord Commander Dante, I'm sure there is a lot of lore. But I'm also curious, in lore, have they talked about what he's done and what the state of affairs is in the Imperium Nihilus? Or is it truly dark and cut off as it is cut off from our friend Robute? Let me know in the comments, lore experts. I turn to you. All right, guys, that is all I had for you for today. This was great. Be sure to check out the merch store, man. It's the best way to support the channel. Be sure to follow me on Twitch. I will do some streaming there. I may also stream on YouTube. I'm just sort of mixing it up, trying to figure out what is working. Follow me on Instagram. Check out the MMA podcast. I think a new episode is going to be going live Thursday. And, until next time, I will see you guys later.